Item 73, Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill number 2934, dog fighting, revised penalty for.
Usual motion.
Senator makes the usual motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. The ayes have it. Senator, you're recognized.
I move adoption of the committee substitute in lieu of the original bill.
Motion is we adopt the committee sub in lieu of the original bill. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. The ayes have it.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill pertains specifically to dog fighting. Several of you are co-authors of the bill. It has been amended in committee. The language is still in there about defining specifically the paraphernalia and other items that are used in dog fighting. The fine for that and the penalty has been increased to $10,000 and to 1 to 10 years in prison for those that are involved in dog fighting and participating in the dog fighting. There is language in here that if a person still the existing law, if they're a spectator under existing law, that there could be a fine of $500 to $5,000, and there's some other language that kind of sets up and defines paraphernalia in the bill. I want to thank, first of all, the bill was filed by many of you. I want to thank Senator DeBar, who unfortunately is not with us, but and others in the committee that worked hard to get this bill to where it is. I think this was a well discussed and hard fought bill that got us to a good place where I feel like a lot of people know that this bill is really strengthening our laws against dog fighting in this state. It makes a strong stand for us to ensure that we're going to do everything we can to get these people that are committing this heinous act, and it helps with our definitions. That's a description of the bill, Mr. President. I'll be happy to yield the questions.
Senator Wiggins for purpose EC recognition.
Question.
Do you yield, Senator?
I yield.
You're recognized, Senator Wiggins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, in my review of the bill, or just the glancing at it, this bill does nothing to address dog and cat abuse that's still a misdemeanor in this state. Is that right?
This has nothing to do with the dog and cat abuse. I think we discussed that yesterday on the bill that Senator Hill had filed. This is specific to those organized dog fights that are unfortunately being put on in certain places in our state.
And dog fighting is already a felony, correct?
Correct.
So why can we bring forward this bill and not bring forward a dog and cat abuse bill?
Well, that's not a question for me. This is the only bill that came to my committee. This is a dog fighting bill that came
well, my recollection is this came forward because there was a dog fighting ring up in somewhere in central Mississippi, and seems to me like if we can bring forward and understand, I'm not, you just happen to be the messenger, I guess, but it seems to me like if we can bring forward a dog fighting bill and increase the penalty we already have, we can bring forward a abuse of a cat or dog bill. I mean, I don't understand why it's so hard. Did you have a bill like that in your committee?
I don't recall. I think I had one bill in there that dealt with animal abuse, other animal abuse, and I know that we had a bill that we passed yesterday that dealt with dog and cat abuse. I don't know, Senator Wiggins, if you had some concern about that bill, maybe that it was appropriate to amend it. I'm not sure.
Well, I know, you know, along in my district and other places, there's been, and maybe you don't know, a cry for that bill, but there's certain outside interests that have refused or have lobbied strictly against a felony dog and cat abuse bill. Are you familiar with that?
I've heard about that.
So,
Senator, let's keep our questions to the bill that is before us, okay?
thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
So did your committee discuss the issue about the dog and cat felony?
The committee
Did it come up during this?
Not that I can recall. I mean, I got other committee members here that you could ask individually when you get a chance, but I think this bill came up. I know some representatives from the Humane Society came in support of this bill. Senator DeBar, unfortunately, is not with us. He kind of handled this bill primarily. I pretty much assigned this to Senator DeBar.
Would you say? Sorry, in our respect, would you say that this is a what we call a shuck and jive bill versus the felony abuse of a cat and dog bill?
Well, if you think it's shucking and jiving to create a felony up to 10 years in prison for dog fighting, then you know that's your view of this bill. I think this is a bill that helps strengthen the laws against people that are, again, committing this heinous activity of raising dogs for the purpose and putting dogs into these horrific fights. And I know Senator Deering's had a bad one in his district. Senator DeBar, unfortunately, is not with us right now, and he brought forth something last week, I think, in Wayne County, where they busted 1 or 2 rings down there of dog fighting. Senator, that's the bill that's in front of me right now. That's the bill that I've got. I don't know. I don't disagree with you. I know there's some issues on the other matter, but that's not the bill before us right now.
Right. And I, too, have prosecuted and put people in jail for dog fighting. So I support the bill. It's just with everything with the citizens that I've heard from throughout the state, and particularly in my areas, it just begs a question. So I appreciate what you've done on this, and I'm always for strengthening violence in that regard. So because it does lead to other bad stuff. So thank you.
Thanks, Senator Wiggins. Senator Younger for purpose of recognition.
Question, Mr.
Do
President.
you yield, Senator?
I yield.
You recognize Senator Younger?
I agree with this bill 100% if there's no amendments to it, but do you think, Senator Hobson, we would have trouble with the dog and cat bills that we have in the Senate if our local law enforcement would do their job and enforce the law that we already have on hand?
Let me say this. I don't want to get off this bill. First of all, I know the kind of questions you're asking. I've seen instances of dog and cat abuse in my area, just like we all have. I think it's sick and horrific. I've heard differing opinions from everything from as bad as, hey, don't interfere with people's pets, to they ought to be put to death for it. I've heard the spectrum of penalties for people like that, and I think it's bad and horrific. And I do think there's an enforcement issue that's out there that. I've heard about instances where somebody has continually abused animals, but apparently nothing's done to those people, and I think that's bad. But this specific bill is about dog fighting.
I agree with this bill 100%, but if our law enforcement locally would enforce the laws, we wouldn't have these troubles. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator.
Thanks, Senator Younger. Senator Hill for purpose of recognition.
Thank you, Mr. President. For a question, please.
Do you yield, Senator Hobson? You recognize Senator Hill.
Thank you, Senator Hobson. I appreciate your work on this. And let me go back to some of the line of questioning that's already been. You do realize that it's already a felony to fight a dog in this state?
Yes.
You do realize that it's already a felony to be a spectator at a dog fight, to never fight a dog, just be standing there looking? It's a felony.
I think the current law is $500 minimum to a year in prison.
But it is a felony to be a spectator to dog fight.
Well, let me make sure with counsel. 1 year typically qualifies for a felony, so I just want to make sure before I respond. But that's correct.
Going back to Senator Younger's testimony or comment or question, do you realize that in the state of Mississippi that law enforcement can only charge a misdemeanor count if an individual sets a dog or a cat alive on fire or pours scalding water on them in a cage? Are you aware that law enforcement can only charge a misdemeanor?
I'm not.
Well, that's what the state law says. Are you aware that law enforcement asked me to strengthen the Dog and Cat Protection Act because they felt like their hands were tied? Not that they're not doing their job, as Senator Younger says, but because no matter how many animals are involved, if they're burned, scalded, dismembered, mutilated, suffocated, lighter fluid and torched, no matter how many, if it's done in front of a police station, they can only charge one misdemeanor count. If a person throws a Chihuahua puppy, 3 puppies on top of a Chevrolet truck and slits their throat in front of a mother and their son, that sheriff could only charge one misdemeanor count. Are you aware of that?
I'm not aware of the specific penalties on that, but I think of what you're getting at, I agree with that. I think it's horrific that some of these things are done. I'm a pet owner myself. I love pets. I love animals. It sickens me to see people abuse animals. Well, let me finish. It sickens me to see people abuse animals, and whether it's an enforcement issue or whether there's some other things there, I don't, Senator, this is not the bill that we're on right now. This bill, and I'm sorry this bill has gotten off track, and I really wasn't planning on, unfortunately, Senator Barr's not here. This bill is about dog fighting, and Mr. President, I'm happy to try to answer questions, but this bill is about dog fighting, and I want to get to the point of this bill, and it's not about other pet abuse. I agree with you. I think it's horrible. I don't know, is there something in here that I'm missing that you guys are seeing? This bill is specific about dog fighting, and I'd like to talk about this bill.
Well, I think what we're concerned about and kind of surprised about, and I did sign on to Senator Deering's bill because I support something to punish people who do this, but I think a felony is already there for dog fighting. And I'm kind of concerned about some of these lists of paraphernalia that somebody might be trying to train a dog for something else and then get mistakenly to be fighting a dog. Is there any concern there?
Not that I'm aware of, and this bill has been talked about in several groups. I know there are a lot of people that have met about it, and the Humane Society supports this bill. They've looked at the language in this committee substitute, and I have been told by their representative that they are supportive of this measure as it is right now. The bill that you've got in front of me is what they support.
One more question. Do you think that dog fighting or torturing a cat or a dog or burning or scalding or maiming a cat or a dog has anything to do with farming?
I can't answer that, but it doesn't seem like it, but I don't know, Senator Hill.
I don't think so either.
Yeah.
I don't think so either. And just to make that clear, I just want to make you aware, since my bill did come to your committee, but it was double referred to agriculture first, where it would have made torture a first offense felony. I realized that it did not come out of agriculture, but it did come to your bill.
That bill did not come to my committee, Senator Hill.
I thought it said Judd A.
No, that bill did not come to my committee.
Okay. Well,
That
maybe
bill-
I'm wrong,
that bill-
but
you're wrong about that.
my question would be that still, to parallel this bill where it's already a felony to fight a dog, do you see the discrepancy in the state law to where it's a felony to fight a dog already and we're strengthening that statute, but we cannot seem to get a bill through here because of the farm lobby to make first offense torture of a dog or cat, dismemberment, burning, scalding, maiming, mutilating a first offense felony?
Do I think, what was the question?
Do you think that there's some type of discrepant thought in here as to where we're strengthening something that's already a felony, but yet we can't get a torture bill, a malicious torture bill for a dog or cat through this chamber to be a felony?
I can't speak to the discrepancies or reconciliations of those that are supporting one side or the other. I mean, that's a matter for individual members in this chamber. It's a matter for the groups. You referenced the groups, the farm groups. If you know, go talk to the farm groups. If that's you think it is, go talk to the farm groups. But I'm not here on behalf of the farm group or anybody else right now. I'm here in my capacity as the chairman of Judiciary A, and a bill that came before my committee that we took up that will strengthen the penalties for dog fighting. And I'm here to say I support the committee substitute that is in front of you right now, and I'm happy to discuss that committee substitute. But if you want to talk about pontification on why people are doing this or why everybody's opinions are different about how animals are treated, I welcome you to have those discussions with the members. And I'm not trying to be difficult, but Senator Hill, you're asking me questions that have very little to do, if anything, with this particular measure that's in front of us.
Well, I think when we're talking about animals being hurt and dogs being fought and hurt, I think it's very relevant to the bill. I mean, I just simply do. And I do appreciate your work on it. I do. I just wanted to make sure that some of those things were clear with the body. And also, I don't know if you realize it or not, but, you know, my grandfather farmed till the day he died, till melanoma took him out of this world. And my great-grandfather was the biggest sheep farmer in the Southeast. So I just want to make sure that you understand that, and this body understands that my desire to make these heinous crimes against dogs or cats has nothing to do with farming. So I just want to make sure that you realize that I come from a farming background. There's history books written about my family members who were the first farmers in my county.
Thank you, Senator Hill.
Thanks, Senator Hill. Any other discussion on this bill prior to us moving to amendments? Senator Deering has an amendment. Has asked to be recognized for his amendment. Amendment number 1 to Senate Bill 2934. Senator Deering, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I want to thank Senator Hobson and the Judd 8 Committee for bringing this dogfighting bill out. It's one that's garnered statewide attention, and someone told me yesterday, even national attention. I'm going to list a few counties: Warren, Adams, Pike, Alcorn, Wayne, Benton, Marshall. You know what those counties have in common, other than being Mississippi counties? They border our surrounding states. What's happening, ladies and gentlemen, is that these dogfighting thugs know that our laws are weak. So rather than going into states like Louisiana, where the fine is $25,000, if you're convicted of dogfighting at 10 years in prison, and other surrounding states where the laws are equally as strict, they come into Mississippi. If they get caught, you know, what's a year in prison versus 10 years in prison? What the amendment does, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, is increases the fine from $10,000 to $25,000. 20 of you co-authored the original bill that I introduced. And Senator Younger, you were one of them. I heard you say you wouldn't support an amendment. I hope you support this one, because it takes us back close to where my original bill was. And a one-year term per dog, and a violation not to exceed 10 years. Now, that is what came out of the committee. It's a 10-year, no more than 10 years. Also, we're adding into the section about the spectator's current law is $500 if you're a spectator, and not more than $5,000, and by imprisonment in the state penitentiary for a term of not more than 1 year. And what my amendment would do was take it back to the original language that I introduced, making it a fine of $1,000 and a 2-year term in prison. Also, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, what the amendment would do is put back in the restitution clause, whereas that person, if he's convicted, has to pay restitution to the arresting officers, or like the sheriff, or the police chief, or the county. And finally, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, it makes the bill effective on and after passage rather than July 1st of 2018. We need to pass this bill and make it effective now so that these thugs won't come into Mississippi. If they see an opening, they'll continue to come in until July the 1st, and that's the reason I made it on and after passage. That concludes my summation of the strike all. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Seeing no further questions at this time, I'll ask if anyone would like to speak on the amendment. Senator Hobson would like to speak on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to ask you to oppose the motion for a couple of reasons. One is that this takes away the discretion of the court. His amendment would take away the discretion of the court to determine in those situations where you had a spectator, maybe they were an innocent spectator. And I told Senator Deering this when he told me he was going to offer the amendment. I said, Senator Deering, what if somebody goes to a party and they're out with some people, and somebody happens to break out a dog fighting ring back in the backyard somewhere, and they have no intent to be there. They got no vehicle to get them there. And I reminded him of a situation I got into in high school when I went somewhere, and then I knew some bad stuff was going on there, and I wanted to get out as quick as I could. We were way out in the country. I had no way to get home, and you could have a person who's out there who's truly an innocent bystander, and you're gonna not give the judge the ability to listen to those facts. You're going to make the judge send this person to prison for up to 2 years. I think that's a bad mistake. I've got enough faith in our judicial system that they should have the discretion to look at the facts and determine whether this person should be going to prison or not. Plus, we've got the amendment changes the penalties and the amounts of the fines. We have been through this bill. We've talked to the Humane Society. They're satisfied with this. The Humane Society that supports efforts to stop animal abuse, they're in favor of the committee substitute that we've got in front of you. And then the restitution piece, Senator Deering, I don't recall seeing that in the example, in the proposed amendment to me, but you know, the restitution can be ordered by the court anyway. I had this in another bill that has already come up this session, and I asked that very question about the restitution. Courts can order that anyway, so there's no need to have in language that says that you have to order restitution. If, in fact, what's being proposed is they have to pay for any fines before they are arrested, if that was being proposed, then this is a different amendment that I'm looking at. If that were being proposed, that would be a violation of your due process rights. So for a lot of reasons, I ask that you vote against the amendment. Let's get back on the committee substitute that's before you, and let's get this strong measure passed so we can send it to the House. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Deering, would you like to close on amendment number 1?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to close.
You're recognized.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I didn't try to go behind Senator Hobson's back. I went straight to him. I gave he and Senator DeBar my first draft of committee substitute. And I came back and gave him, both of them, my second draft of the committee sub. And Senator Hobson has never favored the clause in there on being a spectator. However, that's current law. Right now, it's current law. If you're a spectator, you can be fined $500 and 1 year in prison. That's current law. I'm not trying to change that other than increase the fine. I'm leaving that in the current law. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, 20 of you were co-authors. If I can get 6 more, that'll be 27. And I ask for a roll call vote, Mr. President.
Senator Deering, it does take 6 for a roll call vote. I don't believe there are 6. The question occurs on the adoption of the amendment. If you're in favor of the amendment, I ask you to vote aye. If you're opposed, I ask you to vote no. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. The noes have it. I don't have it. I'm told there's an amendment number 2. Senator Hill. Hold on just a second, Senator Hill. We're going to put this on the screen and try to get copies of it.
Okay.
Senator Hill, you're recognized to explain your amendment.
Thank you. There's 2 things that this amendment changes to current law, mainly 2 things. Right now, a person can torture, mutilate, maim, burn, scald, suffocate, drown, or intentionally starve to death or disfigure any domesticated dog or cat, and upon first offense, those crimes are a misdemeanor. What this would do would elevate those crimes of torturing, intentionally torturing, mutilating, maiming, burning, scalding, suffocate, drown, intentionally starve to death, or disfigure a domesticated dog or cat to a first offense rather than a second conviction, separate offense felony. The second thing this bill would do would allow law enforcement officers to charge up to 10 counts per incident when they go into these horrid situations with these dogs and cats where they're eating each other's bodies, starving to death, eyes gouged out, and all kinds of horrid situations. Right now, under current law, no matter how many animals are involved, whether it's simple or aggravated abuse, a law enforcement officer could only charge one misdemeanor count. So this would bring it up to 10 counts for simple or aggravated cruelty per incident, and it would also make those horrid offenses a first offense felony.
Senator Hudson, for what purpose you see recognition?
Order.
State your point.
Mr. President, this bill is strictly about dog fighting. The latest amendment has to do with dog and cat abuse, the criminality of the crime of dog and cat abuse, not just dog fighting.
Senator Hill, I'm going to recognize you to speak to the point.
The point is, we're talking about harming domesticated animals and dog fighting. This overlaps into the area where people are torturing, starving, suffocating, and maiming dogs. They're using cats as bait many times to train these dogs to fight. I think this is a relevant addition to this bill. The code sections are together in the same chapter, and I would argue that this is relevant addition to this bill.
Thank you, Senator Hill. Senator Polk, I'm going to recognize you for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move we stand in recess, subject call the chair.
Motion is we stand in recess, subject to call the chair, at which point I'll rule on the point of order. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say no. The ayes have it. The Senate is back in order. I will rule on the point of order at this time. Senate Bill 2934 is specific to the act of dog fighting while proposing to define dog fighting paraphernalia under Code Section 97-41-19. The amendment before us amends an entirely different code section and subject matter on animal cruelty and expands the criminal penalty for abusing cats and dogs. No matter how passionate one is on ending all animal abuse, and we should all be passionate about that, this body must maintain its rules. Therefore, Senator Hudson's point is well taken, and the amendment is not germane. We are now back on the original bill.
Be happy to yield to questions, Mr. President.
Senator Willie Simmons, for what purpose you see recognition?
Thank you, Mr. President. I had a question, but I would just like to speak on the bill at the proper time.
Okay. Senator Blackman, for what purpose you see recognition?
To speak against the bill at the proper time.
Okay. Senator McDaniel, for what purpose? Senator Hill, for what purpose? Senator Hudson, for what purpose?
Question.
Senator Hobson, you yield for a question.
I yield.
You recognize Senator Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've had so much talk now about what the bill is not. I'm confused. I don't remember what was the penalty for dog fighting in the bill that was already law, and what are you raising it to?
I'm going to ask counsel if she would to grab me the old law, but I know we're raising it to a penalty of not less than $1,000. I'm sorry, from $1,000 and not more than $10,000. Not less than 1 year to no more than 10 years imprisonment.
Maximum of $10,000 and 10 years in prison.
That's correct.
But does that increase or double the old law?
It does increase it. I think it was 1 to 3 years under the old law, so it's a pretty significant increase, if our memory serves me correct. Yes, 1 to 3 years under the old law, $1,000 to $5,000 of subject. So it doubles the penalty, and it essentially triples the imprisonment fine.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Hudson.
Thank you, Senator Hudson. Senator Derek Simmons for purpose of recognition.
Friendly question, Mr. President.
You yield, Senator?
I yield.
You recognize, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator, for yielding. Does this include cockfighting? And if it doesn't, why not?
No. I think we've already got a law on cockfighting. I don't remember what the penalty is, but this is just dog fight. It's a specific statute that exists in our code section 974119 on dog fights.
Okay. And you're saying cockfighting is already in the law?
I think that we got that in the law somewhere else, and counsel is going to tell me what section it is, but it's in the law.
Thank you, Senator, for
Thank
yielding.
you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Simmons. Seeing no further discussion at this time, I'm going to recognize Senator Simmons, who would like to speak on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I just kind of want to stand to cause us to focus on where we are, and especially since it was taking so much time to get us back to where we are today. And while we were in recess, I just kind of reflected on what we was doing, and my mind went back to the Mississippi Vulnerable Adult Act. Our legacy here, and when we leave here, it is going to be based upon what we did here. Sometime in the future, when you're having a family reunion, when you're visiting your mother, grandmother, auntie, uncle, grandfather, or they're at home with you and you all sit around talking, if they're fortunate enough not to be suffering from some disease that causes them not to be able to remember, they may ask you the question, why is it that on this day being February the 8th, that you did what you did as a senator? And what we're doing, I have nothing against dogs. I have an appreciation for dogs because they serve a great purpose in our life. But when we compare what we are about to do or what we're doing with the Mississippi Vulnerable Adult Act, I just want to read something to you quickly. It says, and this is concerning our senior citizens, it shall be unlawful for any person to abuse, neglect, or exploit any vulnerable adult. And then it goes on to say, any person who willfully commits an act or willfully omits the performance of any act, duty, which act on the omission contributes to, tends to contribute to, or results in physical pain, injury, and mental anguish, unreasonable confinement, or deprivation of services which is necessary to maintain the mental and physical health of other adults. And then it talks about the penalty. This is what the penalty is in the act. 1,000 shall not exceed $1,000 or by imprisonment not to exceed 1 year in jail. This is for our adults, our mothers, our fathers. But this bill that we have before us is talking about crowding the jails and the corrections facility up to 10 years, $10,000. I just want you to think about the legacy. Think about what we are doing and how much time we are spending to talk about incarcerated individuals who may abuse one of our loved pets, and how little attention we give when it's an abuse of one of our adults in our life. 1 year, $1,000, up to the max. But for the pet, we'll do $10,000 in 10 years when we don't have beds to incarcerate individuals who have committed serious crime. I just want us to think about it. And we ought to just kind of lay this bill on the table, send it back to the committee, and think about the vulnerable adults in our lives and where we are.
Thanks, Senator Simmons. Senator Blackman, I will recognize you to speak on the bill at this time, if you'd like. Senator Deering would like to speak. I'll recognize you next. Senator Blackman, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. And just like Senator Simmons, I love dogs, but I love humans more. In child neglect cases, if a parent, a guardian, or other person who intentionally, knowingly, or recklessly commits any act or omits the performance of any duty, which act or omission contributes to or tends to contribute to the neglect or delinquency of any child, or which act or omission results in the abuse of any child, shall be guilty of a misdemeanor, and upon conviction shall be punished by a fine not to exceed $1,000 or by imprisonment not to exceed 1 year in jail or both. If it's felonious child abuse, it's not less than 5 years and up to life as determined by the court. If it's a second act, it's not less than 2 years or more than 10 years. If it's simple and aggravated assault, where you negligently cause bodily injury to another human being, which may likely produce death or serious bodily harm, you can be punished by a fine of not more than $500 or by imprisonment in the county jail for not more than 6 months or both. Now, there is an exception related to simple assault, and in that exception, they list a lot of people, and one of those categories happen to be the legislature. And while we're in session, or if we're performing our regular course of duties, then if someone were to commit harm to us, it would be punishable by a fine of not more than $1,000 or by imprisonment for not more than 5 years. Now, I love dogs. We have had several dogs. I love Castro, but I love our son, Madison Edward, more. I would like to see more stringent laws in place harming my son than Castro. I love Gator, but I love our son, Bradford Jerome, more. I would like to see more stringent laws in place harming my son than Castro. I love Spike, but I love my granddaughter, Enila Shanice, more. I would want to see more stringent laws in place harming my granddaughter than Spike. I loved King, but I love my granddaughter, Summer Rae, more. I would want to see more stringent laws in place harming King than harming my granddaughter. Now, we've been talking about sick and horrific things that have been done to these dogs. But tell me about the sick and horrific things that are done to children, that are done to women who are abused. And yet for domestic abuse, you're talking about a fine of $1,000 and up to 5 years in prison. We talked about torturing and burning and scalding and maiming and dismembering and mutilating a dog. What about torturing and maiming and burning and mutilating and dismembering a child or a woman who has been the subject of domestic abuse? We should be just as passionate about that as we are passionate about talking about a fine of $1,000 and 10 years in prison for someone who has paraphernalia associated with the dog, a dog fighting. We should be just as passionate about protecting our children and increasing the penalties for abuse of our children than we are about abusing a dog. We should be just as passionate about our vulnerable adults as we are about a dog. I had a friend and she loves dogs. And her dog became ill, and the vet called her and said, it's going to require a $3,500 shot. And she said, a $3,500 shot is just a dog. She said, I'll mourn that dog, but I'll get up in the morning. But what about mourning the loss of your children? The loss of a spouse to domestic abuse? What about mourning the loss of your parents to being the victim of vulnerable adults? And the penalties for those heinous crimes are less than the penalties that you're talking about imposing right now for a dog's life.
Senator Watson, for what purpose do you seek recognition?
Question.
Senator Blackman, do you yield for a question?
I yield, Mr. President.
You're recognized, Senator Watson.
Thank you, Senator. And I appreciate your sentiments there, I really do, which really, in my opinion, aims at the heart of it anyway, aimed at the sanctity of life. And you mentioned maiming, which made me think of what the penalty should be for maiming an unborn child.
Well, I am quite certain, Senator Watson, that you probably have some bills that would address that. And this state, I think, has the most stringent laws in the nation as it relates to abortion. As I recall, Justice, within the last few days, I don't know whether it was our side or the House side, but I know it was the House side, imposed that life begins at 15 months. So I am for the sanctity of life. I have given birth to 2 sons, so therefore I must be pro-life. But I also believe, just like I made that decision, everyone else, every woman, with a consultation with their family, should be able to make that decision as well.
So should the penalty for maiming an animal be more than the penalty for maiming an unborn child?
I really don't think there should be any penalties related to animals, so I can't address that question.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Michelle, for what purpose do you see recognition?
Question, please.
Do you yield, Senator Blackman?
I yield.
You recognize Senator Michelle.
Thank you. Senator Blackman, you compared the penalties that are contained in this dogfighting bill to penalties for abuse of vulnerable adults. And I know we enhanced those penalties. I think it's been at least 12 years, and I can't recall what we did on that. But are you correct? Are you sure that the penalties in this bill are more stringent than for abusing a vulnerable adult?
Senator Simmons was the one who brought out that. So, Senator Simmons, what are the penalties?
You said it was. What?
No, I simply stated what Senator Simmons had brought out about the penalties being more stringent in this bill than the bill for vulnerable adults. But he came before me and he stated to this body what the penalties were.
What are they?
Whoever has it, can you read it?
Well, it's a couple of pages long. I just thought maybe you made the statement. I just want to make sure. I have a 96-year-old mom in a nursing home, and last Friday I had a dog die from lymphoma cancer, so I've got interest in both subjects.
Okay. Give it to me, Senator Simmons. I'll read it.
And I would support you in any enhanced penalties. You rattled off several subjects that you felt the penalties were too inferior, and I'd be glad to support you. Did you propose any legislation on any of those bills this year that would enhance the penalties on all those subjects?
Okay, for vulnerable adults, as it relates to if you knowingly exploit a vulnerable adult and you take less than $250, you'll be guilty of a misdemeanor, and upon conviction, you'll be punished by a fine not to exceed $5,000 or by imprisonment not to exceed 1 year in the county jail or both. Where the value of the exploitation is $250 or more, the person who exploits a vulnerable adult shall be guilty of a felony, and upon conviction thereof, shall be punished by imprisonment in the custody of the Department of Corrections for not more than 10 years. So in this instance, it's the fine is $5,000, and it can be up to 10 years. And I believe in this here dog bill, the fine is $1,000 and not to exceed 10 years.
Okay, that was for stealing from a vulnerable adult, I believe you said. But let me ask you another question.
It says exploits.
Okay. Would you allow me to co-author a bill if you brought it forward on all these different subjects that you think these penalties should be enhanced, like child abuse?
Look, I think you would have a better shot at getting them passed, so I'd co-author them.
I'll help you. Let's work on it together.
I'll work with you on it. You can be the lead author.
Thank you.
Senator Hill, for what purpose do you see recognition?
Question, Mr. Chairman.
Do you yield, Senator Blackman?
I yield.
You recognize Senator Hill.
Thank you, Representative Blackman. The first year I was here...
He's on the other side.
Excuse me, Senator Blackman. The first year I was here, I, along with Senator Tindall, revamped the vulnerable adult statute because my grandfather was exploited when he was old. And the first thing we did was made that statute extend to 5 years instead of 2 years on the statute of limitation. And are you aware that number 3 under that chapter says, any person who willfully inflicts physical pain or injury upon a vulnerable adult shall be guilty of a felonious abuse or battery or both of a vulnerable adult, and upon conviction may be punished by imprisonment in the state penitentiary for not more than 20 years.
Yes, ma'am. I'm reading it with you.
So I just wanted to make sure that you knew that some of us who support dogs also have our names on strengthening some statutes that go along with vulnerable abuse and protecting unborn children as well.
Thank you, Senator Hill. Thank you, Senator Blackman. No further questions at this time. I'm going to recognize Senator Deering, who would like to speak on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I'm looking for Senator Hobson. Where'd he go?
You recognize Senator Deering.
I just wanted to thank you, Senator Hobson, for bringing my bill out. I appreciate you so much in the Judd Aid Committee. Just a little history, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate. For 10 to 12 years, I introduced legislation to put cats in the animal abuse statute, only pertain to dogs. And I was fought for 10 or 12 years, and finally, the opposition, we passed it through the Senate. But finally, the opposition in the House realized that I wasn't going away. And they finally put cats in the statutes. So, Senator Hobson, I'm not going away. I'm still going to try to make this bill as strong as I can next year.
Senator Hill, for what purpose you seek recognition?
I'd like to speak on the bill.
Go ahead and come forward. Senator Hill, you are recognized to speak on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Senator Hobson and Senator Deering. I have spoken, since domestic violence was brought up, I have spoken with the Domestic Violence Coalition, and I've looked at statistics on domestic violence cases where there's an overwhelming link between abusing animals and abusing people. Domestic violence, serial killers, all kinds of things are 100% definitely tied to animal abuse. So this is not just about animals. This is about deviant behavior. People that abuse animals also abuse people. There's no doubt about that. This has nothing to do with farming. This has something to do with sick people that get their kicks out of watching dogs bite, gnash, tear, bleed until the death, until one of them has to be dragged out unconscious. This is barbaric practice. Just like Senator Watson said, it is a barbaric practice to take an unborn child out of the womb limb for limb and tear them apart as well. And I would hope that if that 15-week bill is brought over here, that the same passion would be shown if that bill gets to the floor about tearing these unborn babies apart. And like I said, the first year I was here, I worked hard to strengthen that vulnerable adult statute because I had a grandfather that was a general in the Army that was exploited and abused in his later years. So don't compare people trying to protect violent, vicious, vile things done with animals that they don't care about people, because they're tied together and you can't separate it. The Bible tells you in Proverbs to take care of your animals. Doesn't matter what they are. Tells you to be good stewards with what you use for food or how you take care of your animals. This is not just something we dreamed up. This is biblical. How you treat the most vulnerable says what you are as a society. And I ask that you support Senator Deering's bill because it is the decent thing to do. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion at this time, Mr. Chairman, would you like to move final passage or speak?
Thank you, Mr. President. I do want to thank Senator Deering and Senator DeBar for their hard work on this. Obviously, there are a lot of passions on this issue, and we've debated it good today. And I would ask that you pass this by use of the morning roll call. Thank you.
Use of the morning roll call has been suggested. Final pass. Any objection to use of this procedure? Any senator wish to be recorded as voting no? Please record Senator Turner, Senator Butler, Senator Horn, Senator Simmons Willie, Senator Simmons Derek, and Senator Blackman is voting no. Please record Senator Sampson Jackson is voting no. I'm going to recognize. Please record the rest of the Senate as voting aye, and the bill is passed. Senator Blackwell, for what purpose do you see recognition?
Without objection, I'd like to be added as a co-author.
Any objection to adding the senator as a co-author? Seeing none, please add Senator Blackwell as a co-author.